development and the different issues that might be associated with it and possible solutions. Norman, are you ready?
Sure.
Do you want to use my
Thank you.
tablet now for the
Or
Larry
just
heads?
that paper that we
Yeah,
wrote
okay.
up. Put it on there.
And then if you get down to here, you can just pinch and that's the
Okay.
spreadsheet.
So, just as a background, if you remember, we never had a consensus regarding what the owners wanted to do regarding the development of 11th Street. And we never felt that we had received the proper position of each of those landowners. So we had asked the town to look into it and come back with a report. So no one is there to report, and to come up with costs associated with the development for each
Yeah.
owner.
So if you remember before, we were talking that the road between Schaefer's and Third was around $186,000
For the whole thing.
for between Third and Schaefer's for sewer, water, and road bed, just to gravel roads and ditches. So we've gone in and we've cut everything out that we could think of. So if you look at the first
Spreadsheet.
local improvement spreadsheet, it's 11th Street West, Third to the end of Schaefer's. And it actually comes in at $169,500 without any money for any problems or anything that could happen. So that's just
Capital.
cut right to the bottom that we could do it for.
Using our new agreed on rates for the, no,
No, that's road builders rates. Because,
this is road builders.
yes.
Okay.
But it doesn't put in extra gravel, it doesn't put in anything at all other than what you'd need just to do it. If McNally's were to bid this, they'd be way higher than this, because they bid in contingencies and all kinds of stuff. So we did that, and then I went through and I phoned the landowners, oops, okay, there we go. So I phoned and I talked to each one of the landowners to see if they were wanting to pay that kind of money. And so I kind of on the position of the landowner sheet there, it explains what each one of them kind of thought. Did you guys read through them, or do you want me to go over those a little
I
bit?
think we got it.
Like most of them don't feel that it's worthwhile for them to do any of that or to pay or anything, because, well, Don Williams' position is if he pays $52,900 and he subdivides 1 or 2 lots off, by the time he sells those 2 lots, he hasn't made any money. Gary Sanderson couldn't pay any of that money, wouldn't be able to pay it. So the only way that he would pay it is if we maybe caveated it at the time that they sell the properties, and then maybe could pay a small portion each time, which would put us a lot of years down the road before we ever got that money. And I didn't put it in there, but he would prefer to just outright sell the whole lot and just be out of it. George Toon and Cody Toon, they've already given us the roads, but they're kind of in the same position as Don Williams. They would get 2 lots, and their portion is $64,000 each. So that 2 lots, boy, by the time you subdivide it, you really haven't made any money.
And those lots are on the other section.
They're they're past Schaefer's to
Yeah,
the
yes,
south.
on
Yeah.
the south.
So by the time you take in what you paid for the lot, what it costs you to subdivide it, the $64,000 you owe for your half of it, you won't end up making anything on those properties. Steve Holland, says he's never gonna subdivide as long as he's alive. So basically, he doesn't wanna do it either. Dave Schaefer and Garrett Capps are in kind of the same boat. It's on their side lot. It's smaller money for them. It's only $15,000 and $11,000, but they would get no benefit from it. They access from the front. It's just a side yard. I guess they could get a back access possibly, but
they can't subdivide.
they can't subdivide. They would never be able to get anything. R&R land holdings, that's the piece that Weston's owned. It's now R&R is Don Weston's son, and he doesn't know what he wants to do right now with it. Whether he would sell it, whether he wouldn't. He doesn't want to give up a lot for the road. He doesn't want to pay anything. He just wants to hold it and see what happens with land development. As far as the town's portion of it goes, the town would have to eat a couple of pieces because we would have the end of 3rd Avenue there, so we'll have 60 feet on both sides there that we would, well, Sanderson get one side, we'd get the other side. So I think it was about $8,600 or something that we would have to count as ours. Once the road's built, the town would then be responsible to develop and maintain the road, including proper grading, storm drainage, dust abatement, and any other improvements that were required once we build it. So then, once we build it, there's all of a sudden all these ongoing costs that we're gonna have to deal with. Dust abatement's gonna be a huge one because it's now west of everybody. And we had 12th Street there where we had a lot of problems with dust on those people.
Councillor Creed, do you want to ask a
Yeah,
question?
question. Nolan, on all of the ones that you've gone through, what is their present road and utility access? Do they all have adequate
They all have access off
Access.
other areas, yeah.
for both street and utility? I mean, you know, if they
Tunes
have-
come in off 12th, Cody Tune has the temporary access off of 10th,
Mhm.
Don Williams access off 12th, R&R, which is Weston's, got all the way down to 2nd that they can have access. Steve Holland is accessing through the 2nd lot on 3rd Avenue, he owns that lot too, so he's got access through there, MPC approved that for him. And Garrett and Dave both access off 3rd Avenue.
All right. So, according to what you're presenting to us, the 2/3 of the landowners are really not in favor, and they represent over 50% of the land. So that option is closing pretty rapidly. But,
Did you want me to go over the differences between a service line that when John was here last time, he talked about, why don't we do it like Cody Tunes and do a service line?
okay, go ahead.
Okay, so we kind of looked at that too, just because John wanted to know the difference between the cost and that. So, Cody Tunes line didn't require any manholes, no shut-off valves, except for one at the property line, none of that kind of stuff. Cody Tunes was 220 feet that we did. It was a 1-inch water line and a 4-inch service sewer line. So a 1-inch water line costs $8.59 a foot. In the Schaefer's development down along 11th, we'd need an 8-inch water line. That costs $19 a foot.
Yeah.
So the difference was, just for the materials alone, for doing from 3rd Avenue to Schaefer's is $59,000, not including installation, anything like that. And the differences on doing a 1-inch service and a 4-inch water line there would have been $45,000. And that includes 2 fire hydrants. Brandon says we should actually have 1 more, so we should have 3. But 2 fire hydrants at $10,000 each, 3 water shut-off valves at $3,000 each, and 2 manholes at $6,500 each, which we think is a little bit low, but that's what Schaefer's charged us to put in that manhole on 3rd. So we used that figure.
Okay.
So that comes to $42,000 of the materials.
Okay. So that is quite good. Councillors, if you don't have any further question, I would ask Jeff to update us of the conversation that he had with John Schaefer, since John knows about all that description of owners and their position. We have since then had John come back and see Jeff this afternoon, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe,
Maybe please ask one more.
yeah, sure, Councillor, if you have one more question
Yeah.
for Nolan, go ahead.
Yeah, I just, with Cody Toon, now he just go over that, his access again. Does he access over somebody else's land?
We
or-
gave him a temporary access over an MR piece of land that we have on the end of 10th Street.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
it's a municipal reserve. Some point it could be a playground or something like that, depends on what develops there, but,
uh-huh.
yeah.
So that could disappear?
Once 11th Street's built, it has to
It
disappear.
has to disappear,
Yeah,
okay.
that's already
Now,
been agreed upon.
so if John was to sell the lot that he wants to sell or subdivide that, could he have them access it across somebody's land or his land, or,
He already has an access easement across the north side of his property.
so without a road, he just have to have water and.
He put in an access easement there, kind of behind the town's back, yeah.
Well, so,
So he would still need to get water and sewer there.
yeah, I mean, because Cody doesn't have a road, so he could still get somebody in there, they wouldn't have a road, but they would still have to have water and sewer in there.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor Peavoy?
Yeah, how many of these property owners currently have, just on an average, more than half, less than half, currently have restrictions where once that road goes in, things have to change for them? Is it just Cody?
Just Cody so far, and Steve would have to, at some point, somebody I'm sure is gonna, if 11th Street's there, is gonna change the access and sell that other lot.
Right.
Right, Steve wouldn't have said he never would as long as he's alive,
But if it was there,
yeah. But it
Might do
would,
something. And that's very often what happens. You put a road, people start to change their mind regarding subdividing their lots.
yeah.
I think we saw it.
Yeah, we need to be.
Well, because there's money to be made.
It's a very good case in point.
Yeah.
To put the road down past Holland's though, the total is
it's about 500.
$456,000.
Right.
And
So
that's in addition to, or all
That's
inclusive?
including the other, that's the
Includes
whole,
the other
the whole
section.
road. yeah.
Okay.
Kind of more than doubles the
Right,
cost.
okay. I see.
I mean, Steve Baldwin would have to pay that $400,000.
No, Steve
No.
Bolin would have to pay, um,
52.
52,000, yeah.
2,000.
Gary Sanderson would get hit with the most at 114,000,
Yeah, which would be
which he would not, will
prohibited.
not be able to pay.
And then a follow-up question then on percentages. How many of these landowners then have agreements in place to give up for the road? About half of these people?
None of them really have an agreement in place to give up for the
With the
road.
town.
With the town at all.
So just in principle, they've agreed? Some.
Sanderson's
No.
agreed with Schaefer's to
That's
give
the
them the
only
road,
one.
and Bagazi, who priorly owned Williams' property, agreed.
I thought, weren't these all cut out through zoning restrictions previous with the MPC in earlier
The
agreements?
plan shows the road there, but none of them have ever agreed to giving us the road. That's something that at a time of a subdivision, we have a little bit of leverage to be able to get those pieces of road that we actually need when they want to subdivide. They want something, we want something, we make a deal.
All right. So maybe we should give Jeff a chance if you
Sure.
don't have any more questions for Norman. Norman, thank you very much for the update.
Just leave it there, I think so too. And I haven't been able to chat with Nolan, he's actually on vacation as we speak.
Well,
Have a good night.
enjoy
It's
it.
been good.
Yeah, so he's swung in here quick to have a chat. So Nolan, I haven't visited with him since I've been back from vacation, but John came to see me today. Nolan provided him with some of the information for tonight last week. And when he came in today, we had a good discussion for a while. You might recall when he was here last, he suggested that if the town would put in the utility, he'd pay for the road. And I'm not sure that's his position anymore. He's a little frustrated. He feels like maybe he's ready just to pull everything off and don't do it and be done with it. But at the same time, when we visited today, I told him how one of the reasons we asked the owners about their position on this was, one, to gauge local improvement tax potential, which I think we can safely say isn't gonna happen. But if we looked at a caveat arrangement, I think that the landowners are probably agreeable, at least if we took the chunk from Third to Schaefer's. So no Tunes, no Hollands, half a Sanderson, Don Williams, John. Those are really the only three in play here. Garrett Capsis is in play, but he can't subdivide again. So at the end of the day, let's be honest, we're never recouping money from that frontage, ever. And I said, you know, it seems like Gary and John are both on side with a caveat type of arrangement. And I think Don Williams would probably be okay, because if he never plans to subdivide, he's never subject to the charge.
Right.
It's just the town never gets compensated. So that's the risk for the town. And potentially the caveat would be so cumbersome, it would make no sense for Don to subdivide. We actually could seal that fate inadvertently. Like Nolan said, the cost for subdivision would be so high, he's just basically giving up land and making his lot smaller for no compensation. So I'm not sure, there's 52,000 there allocated to Don out of 160,000 that there's a risk the town would never get back. But there's also potential that if he decided to subdivide, what he actually sells the land for is up to him. It's not our business. If the new owner wants to clear the caveats and gets the land for $1, that's his call. It's not our call. So my conversation with John was, if there's some appetite of the council to look at a caveat, is he still interested? And his answer was yes, he still is. And he'd still be willing, instead of building the road, and by the way, you'll notice that the numbers are all fairly similar here, but he would still be willing to put $50,000 cash in. Well, under this, his caveat portion would be $52,500. So essentially, he would just pay his caveats up front. And then we would have to collect from Sanderson and collect from Williams upon sale or subdivision. The reason I say sale or subdivision is I think that there's a risk that on the Sanderson property, if we do it by subdivision, somebody could simply buy that lot and keep it as a whole lot and live on a large acre lot and never subdivide. So you never get your money. And all we got out of a $170,000 construction project was $52,000. Okay? So there's risk for the town there. But John is open to still putting $50,000 on the table. One thing he feels, and I don't know that this table, from what I know, agrees, but he feels that not only would he pay $50,000, he would give the town the endeavor to assist opportunity. So he wouldn't pursue that anymore, but he'd allow the town to pursue it.
On
So there'd be
Third.
cash there on Third.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's as lucrative as he wants it to be, because I'm not sure that we would pursue an endeavor to assist with
Yeah.
everybody. So that's just a bit of the update. He's saying that if the council isn't prepared to do 11th with a caveat system, that he's out, he's not participating on anything anymore, and he would just look at extending a service line to the northernmost lot on that property and put one house there, and he'd build the road. Now there's a number of logistics we'd have to work through there, but
It would still have to be a full sewer, 8-inch sewer.
well, but he's saying, what he's saying, and not for you and I to have a side conversation, but
Right, okay.
his conversation is that, well, you just let Cody Toon run a 4-inch for 200 feet, that's all I want to do. Just run me a 4-inch and a 1-inch for 225 feet and call it good. And I'll just put one lot there. And I'll pay the $11,000 you charge Cody and I'll move on. And I'll build a inferior road so I can get in and out of there. So that's kind of where he's at with it. It is, so I've been trying to consider all this. At the end of the day, if we feel there's a reasonable expectation that we could get our money back through caveat, it's not an unreasonable proposal in many ways. But we're really crystal balling and rolling the dice on the reasonable probability of recouping the money. Because I just don't know. So it would depend on the nature of the caveat. So for example, if Mr. Sanderson is actively trying to sell the parcel, if the caveat could read that the entire amount was due upon sale, I think there's a pretty good reasonable probability that that land sells in the next few years.
I think that that's the way you'd have to go, because
Yeah.
if you said subdivision, then
Mhm,
they
no.
would have to have the lots pre-sold prior to the
Right.
subdivision in order to collect the money
Yeah,
You pay,
yeah.
but if you set it upon sale, they could,
Yeah.
when they sold the lot, they could pay us the amount.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, if there is a road adjacent to Mr. Sanderson's land, it's probably more saleable.
Right.
It probably increases his opportunity to sell it versus right now, although it can access from 12th. There is a 12th Street access, well, there's
There's two.
an inferior access there now, just an agricultural
The
access.
plan does show a Third
Yeah.
Avenue going straight through to 12 too,
Oh,
the
okay.
West Area Structure Plan.
So that was a conversation we had. He still is putting that money on the table, because it's basically equal to his caveat amount. What the caveat amount would be, it's roughly equal to it. And if you look at what we felt the road would be, that was 43.7. It's roughly equal to the cost of the road. So that number works for him, one way or another. And for Mr. Schaefer, it's actually even more beneficial if we just caveated his land and didn't make him pay it up front, because then he only has to pay it as he sells. So that's even more beneficial for him, but I think he'd be open to front it. So the question, I think, is, looking at probably $170,000 touch without dust abatement, which I would suggest we need to probably include in the caveat and have dust abatement from day one. We could potentially look down that road if council is open to having a little risk on ever getting compensated for a large portion of that money, because there's risk there. If Don Williams never subdivides, then $52,598, that is never realized, ever.
Okay. All right, so questions for Jeff before I say anything else?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So when we were talking about the Third Avenue potential endeavor to assist,
Yeah.
we were talking about some circles of benefit area.
Yeah,
And they would be like high concentrated close to and maybe thinning out as it gets a little further away.
yeah,
But that took into account the fact that other people use these roads. And ultimately, other people will use this road. So, sometimes when we break it down where we're just talking about adjacent landowners, we're limiting the scope of that benefiting area, which could include, a circle outward. Ultimately, it's going to be a lot better once this connects through, and it becomes a through road, right?
Right.
As long as it's just this partial little half road, it's not really benefiting a whole lot of people. But once that connects down eventually, and you start having this, our area structure plan grid taking place, there's a huge benefit to the citizens of this town. And, we're seeing years go by without any progress in this area. And so it's just my feeling that maybe we as a council need to consider what that benefiting area looks like. And for instance, earlier you alluded, Mayor, to the democratic process of, okay, we've polled these people. But under the same principles of democracy, have we polled the whole town to find out what the benefit is to the town on this? I'm not saying we should, I'm just saying it's council's job to look at that and weigh those issues. I mean, obviously, if we put the full to the penny cost burden on these adjacent owners, then, we're never gonna get any of them to agree. But if we say, hey, as a town, how does this fit our bigger plan? Is this the direction we wanna go? Is this gonna be for the greater good? Maybe that tips the scale the other way.
Okay, that brings me back to something that I was discussing with Jeff earlier on, thinking that maybe what is lacking as we look at this development, or maybe similar development in our town, is maybe the proper policy. Maybe what we have right now is too targeted on one landowner, rather than to be broadened in principle regarding subdivisions that might include different adjacent landowner. And then how do we deal with such a thing in a way that is reasonable to all taxpayers, in a sense that we need to evaluate what is the risk and what is the potential of return on the investment. Because all that sooner or later comes out of one single pot. It's a land reserve account. That account cannot be depleted. It has to be sooner or later replenished. How do you replenish that? Is by recouping the money that you have allowed for investment of infrastructure. So it appears to me that the policy we have is not broad enough in scope. So the policy that I would prefer to see is a policy that allows for circumstances like this, where there are multiple owners, with the possibility of looking at it as what Jeff alluded to, is what is a reasonable risk and of return or no return. Maybe we need to start to look at something like that to make better decisions. Because right now, we are confined to that policy that we have that restricts us to say pretty well no to anything. And that becomes maybe problematic for us because it's 4 years we're struggling with that, which tells me there's an issue at the policy level. And maybe the scope needs to be broadened. It's just my thought.
I have a question that maybe Jeff can help me with, but as we consider you talk about the cost, recouping the cost and the risk of recouping the cost, and if you have taken into account, or if we should take into account, immediately if the road is built there, the land values are increased, and the taxes will be increased, and of course if they're sold, then the taxes will be increased further. So I'm just wondering if you have looked at that as far as your cost analysis there. What is the probabilities of increased revenues from taxes on the properties?
So short answer, no. We've considered it. We were just, and Nolan was just looking at the cost of construction.
Sure.
If council, we could easily build a business case. In fact, if I were to go back a number of years, when John was at the table with this originally, we built a business case based on what we felt the build out of that whole area was going to be over long term. I could probably find that thing somewhere. But we looked at trying to guess at one house a year based on the area structure plan, what was the tax implication and the return. Tax implications are interesting things, and I'll just give a quick scenario. Let's say we put in 11th from 3rd to the end of Schaefer's, and let's say after 5 years, all 4 homes are built on John's, let's say hypothetically. So you're taking in municipal portion about maybe 10,000 a year, maybe 12,000 a year municipal portion, not counting school and not counting seniors. So at 12,000 a year for 4 homes, are you actually even covering the cost of servicing the 4 homes? What if we have to put $40,000 worth of dust abatement every 3rd year there? Like we're planning on doing on 12th and 2nd and 7th. Now I'm not saying that's the exact time frame or the exact cost, but just hypothetically, and it took us 5 years to get to that point. So we had 5 years with less revenue, and then you have snow removal and road grading and hydrant flushing and all that stuff. So you have this cost when you extend out further than the infrastructure is. And too often, and I know John does this and we all do it, we say, man, there's 10 lots on Gary's and 4 at John's, and all of a sudden we got 20,000, 25,000 a year in taxes. Well, eventually you do, that's true. It's absolutely true. But do you actually keep up with the servicing of those lots? I don't know the answer to that. My guess is for a number of years it's a tight break even at best. That's my guess. On 4 houses anyway. It's a very close break even. So it should be considered, if council were to say, look, we want to entertain a caveat structure, we want to look at caveating those 3 property owners and moving ahead with this, that's I think the point where we would come back and say, okay, let's consider tax implications at a reasonable build out rate. So if we put it in and we don't ever get Don Williams 52,000, for example, and we have 1 home a year over how many years, here's actually the point we get our money back. It might be this many years or this many years. And it's probably, frankly, not an obscene number to get our money back, but there's a cost to service those homes as well. So there's annual operational costs for those as well. And to your point, real quick, Councillor Peavoy, you should always consider the general benefit, because there is,
Yeah.
the question is, if you go down the street and say, hey, would you like us to take $50,000 of your taxes and build a road to John's 4 lots? How's that poll coming out for you? I don't know the answer to that, but you're not gonna find Joe and Jane taxpayer. But Joe and Jane taxpayer are gonna say, wait, what? Why am I doing that? Why are you gonna take 20 homes worth of our taxes and build a road from it? You know, there's gonna be some dissonance there between the ratepayer. But yes, there's going to be general benefit eventually, and I think it's reasonable you would consider what that looked like, particularly when it's fully gridded up. Totally agree. Yeah, I think that's a reasonable thing to do when you start to really get down to brass tacks on this, if you're going forward with it. Yeah.
So maybe what we need to look at is, first of all, are we interested in having administration draft a policy that is a little bit broader in scope, but also protects the town regarding the risk of development, and that would be embedded in that policy. In other words, it allows council to still have the last say regarding what's going on. Yes.
I like that idea. I don't like the fact that it takes so long to move forward on any kind of development the way we have been
Yeah.
going.
But I
This
think,
might help.
I think if we had a policy this way, it could come the first week in September, possibly. Right. And if it's a policy, you can adopt it
Yes.
right away. So you can recommend to have it adopted at the next council. My point of view, before we move forward, we need to have that policy in place, because it has to be fair for anybody else afterwards. The playing field needs to be equal to all. So if we were to have administration look at that, bring that draft for the first meeting in September, then we could have that adopted the second meeting in September. And from there on, we can start to look at, if council is willing to start to look at that possibility of absorbing some risk. It'll be up to you to decide. But let's have a policy, first of all, in place that allows us to do that.
Yeah.
Right now, we have nothing that allows us to do that one way or the other. So let's base ourselves on policy, and we'll be safer there. So if somebody is interested in that, you need to move that.
Yeah, just one question maybe for administration. Along the lines of this policy, you know, I think some of our frustration in this little corner of town comes from the multiple conflicting owners. I know that our current, you know, path that we've been on, our current policy, as it were, works maybe better under a single owner situation. And so I'm wondering if maybe this policy, rather than undoing the good that that's been doing, maybe just takes into consideration the exceptions, but maintains the, you know, the goodness that we have in that other. I mean, I'm sure you'll do a
Yeah.
good job, but does that make sense? Like, I just
No,
want to be
and-
cautious that by trying to fix this one part of our town, we're not shooting
No.
ourselves in the foot in
No.
all the other
No.
development areas.
And Councillor, that was exactly the discussion we had with Jeff. And I think, Jeff, you kind of understood what it is that we're trying to look at. It's a difference between one landowner with one parcel of land and different owners that are trying to come to term with having
With different
proper
lifespans.
utilities and road build-up.
Return on investment's very
Yeah,
low.
but we also need to protect the taxpayer. The taxpayer needs to be protected at all costs. It has to be reasonable. So that policy has to speak of reasonable expectations.
So with that in mind, I'm happy to direct administration to draft such a policy. Do you need some specifics in that motion?
I have considering reasonable expectations of return, general public benefit, multiple landowners, and protection of taxpayers in the policy.
That's good.
Sounds good.
That's good.
All right, so All in favor? Thank you. I think, more I grapple with that, more I realize COUF always say, if you can't make a decisions because you don't have the right policy. So I start thinking, what is it we don't have? Maybe that's what we didn't have. All right, thank you very much, councillors. I appreciate your support. All right, let's move a little bit.
Should we excuse our Nolan?
No, but
Back to
unless,
vacation.
unless
Sit
you
in
are on holiday deciding to do that, we wish you well, and thank you so much for your diligent work on this one, because it helped us really understand and have a clear vision of what the conundrum is in that part of the woods.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, much appreciated. All right, we have minutes to be adopted for the regular meeting of July the 11th. Councillor Barfuss.
Minutes for the regular meeting of July 11th, 2017.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you.
A long time ago.
Yes. Let's move forward. Item 6 should be easy to do. Draft bylaw 1660s, candidate nomination deposit. As we know, we increased the deposit for good reasons.
We're just passing third reading.
So we're passing
Yeah.
third reading.
Okay, I will move that we pass third reading.
Okay,
of that
for bylaw
Bylaw
1660.
1660, yeah, candidate nomination deposit.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. The next one is a fire service building. If you remember, we passed first reading, let a little bit of time pass by for second and third reading. Today is the day we can pass those two readings. So unless you have questions.
Second reading.
Thank you. Second reading on bylaw 1661, fire services building. All in favor? Thank you very much. And third reading?
You're on that committee, right?
I'll move third reading of bylaw 1661, fire services building.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you very much. So that is done, and I'm glad we have those in place. Under 7, other businesses, transfer station road agreement. As you could see, that is a very interesting story, that road. Under the Municipal Act, Section 18, I believe, that road is not even in a jurisdiction of the county nor of the town. It is under the jurisdiction of the blood tribe. But as we understand, the use of the road is county and town, therefore the agreement to try to maintain that town to the best of our abilities. So we need an approval of this agreement, which the county is willing to entertain.
Hold on a second, I want to ask a quick question.
But we can pass, we can,
Councillor?
go ahead.
Only
Put the
4:30.
motion forward. Put the motion forward and we'll ask questions before
Okay.
we vote.
I'll move that we approve the agreement between the town of Cardston and Cardston County.
Okay, thank you. Questions?
Conundrum, how can we do this when it doesn't belong to us?
It's a very good question. Jeff will answer that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is interesting. Under the Act, it talks about when there are road allowances between municipalities, the municipalities maintain the roads to their south and to their west. Okay, it kind of goes back to that old farming practice of who keeps up the fence, right? You keep your south and your west fence up. So this one falls on the south boundary of the blood tribe, the north boundary of the county. And so under the MGA, technically, it would be a road most likely maintained by the blood tribe. However, history has shown that we've always maintained it. The county and the town have always done it, for one. And two, the blood tribe is not subject to the MGA.
What
Okay.
is, where the conundrum is.
So,
That's a conundrum.
The
But it
big
is.
legislative piece is, the legislation which says it would be theirs, they are not subject to. So it's a very unique legislative piece. And I can understand why they wouldn't consider it to be a road under their jurisdiction or maintenance. I get that. And in fact, it was probably the town and the county that built it originally to go to the transfer station. Because if you go past it, there's no more road. It's not that there's a road along the entire right-of-way. It's not how it works. So it's just one of those interesting things that my opinion is that over the years, it's been ambiguous who's gonna take care of it, even between the town and the county.
Yes.
And this is a good step in formalizing between us and the county who's gonna take care of it. But yes, it's a legislatively unique road, to say the least.
Right, and what I have asked Jeff is to maybe write a letter to the group that deals with the MGA at the government level, to try to address that, and maybe with a copy to AUMA, because I have a meeting, a committee there too. Because those are little details that are not spoken of in legislation when the two level of government conflict. So meanwhile, we have motions on the table.
Another question. I like all the things in here, 1, 2, 3, and 5. Number 4 is a real issue there. There's never been any dust suppression that I can recall out there. I took that road out there right after the county put the gravel in there again recently, and it is awful.
Yeah, it is.
Couldn't
It's
see the
just-
vehicle in front of me.
Boy,
I
you
know.
couldn't see
It's-
nothing.
It's
And,
hopeless.
yeah, so
And it
there's
was
gotta be
always in front of
something done with that.
Okay, what I
Dust
was,
suppression.
yeah, what I was asking Jeff, maybe in next budget or so, we should consider a Chinese asphalt on that road.
Chinese
Yeah.
asphalt?
Yeah, Chinese asphalt is what is,
The most
well, I don't
Olympic
know,
pressure.
that's what, you know, that's what they
Pan-Asian.
call it apparently,
Is that the 12th Avenue stuff?
Yeah, 12th and 7th.
I don't know how
It's
you
not the
call
rhino
it.
coating.
No, that stuff did not end up working. They don't do that anymore.
Okay, so, I mean, those things have different names for whatever reason, I do not know, but that's what I call it in the trade. So, that is something that I was saying, maybe we need to look at
Yeah,
this.
the theory behind the fourth piece there, Councillor Barnes, is we'd agreed that the county would always supply gravel, we agreed the town would always supply the machining,
Well, we never
but that we
agreed
would
on
need
the
to
dust.
share, that dust abatement cost is kind of above and beyond. It's more of a hard cost for each of us. The county has plenty of gravel, we've got machines. This is a more hard cost, it would need to be budgeted year to year.
Yeah,
That was the
So I
thinking
thought
behind
we-
that one.
I thought for the
Had good dust
improvement,
dispersion last night.
Yeah, we got a little rain last night, which helped, but that's gonna last till about probably now, this afternoon.
It's probably done.
Yeah, it's probably over.
anyways, so we have that motion on the table, so all in favor? Thank you very much. On the 7B Lethbridge County, if you could see, this is to create more updated legislation rather regarding sharing of resources between different jurisdictions, municipalities, etc., regarding emergency services. So what we really need here is a motion to approve that updated version to the Southern Alberta Emergency Management Resource Sharing Agreement.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
just a point of clarification. This is an updated version of the agreement, but the town was not a party to the original agreement.
Ah,
So this is a new arrangement for us,
For
if
us.
council chooses to move ahead.
Yes.
It isn't new for many municipalities, but it would be new for us.
right.
So just to be clear.
Okay, well, looking at it, I would say it's a very good agreement. I like the revision from the old version. I'm sorry, guys, is that because those two versions have been presented to us at Mayor's
Yeah,
Assembly,
you've seen them there, yeah.
I treat them as something that I know about,
Yeah,
and realizing you may not have the same
So
knowledge.
my assumption is that this would then basically take the place of some of the other agreements that we have with other municipalities directly.
Yeah.
so we've got about 12 other MOUs.
Right.
That if there's any exceptions, so if there's any parties that don't agree to this, I'd keep that individual MOU, but otherwise it would consolidate all the rest into the one.
It's a better agreement, Gilly.
So I'm prepared to move that we accept this agreement as it's been presented to us then.
Thank
Just
you.
one quick question.
Go ahead.
Historically, have the county and the tribe been a part of this old agreement?
I don't know if the Blood Tribe has, because they rely on the Red Cross and other external agencies to provide that. And I couldn't say if the Red Cross has been a party. My guess is, under their new arrangement, they are not. but I think the counties have all been fairly involved to this point. And
Because-
if not, we have a specific MOU with the county and the Blood Tribe as well.
And the
Yeah.
Red Cross is right in standoff.
Mm.
They have all the emergency supply right there. Okay, so we have a motion on the table. All in favor? Thank you very much. 7C is an interesting little bit of a story. We had a power grant that had been given to us after much effort, but came too late last year. It came after the power was done. And when we saw that money, we were shocked. So that was $8,000, 800 and some.
So it partially covers costs.
No, but let me tell you what happened. That money, when it arrived at the town, was put in a surplus funding of the town. But it had to be earmarked for the power, except that council never reverted the money by way of motion from the surplus funding to the account that is called 272602. So what we need the motion for is to move that money that belongs really to the power account back to that.
I can make that motion then to make that $8,840 from general surplus as reserves and then spend it on the 2017 power.
No,
Isn't that what
you
you
don't
want?
want to spend it, you want to put it to the account 272602.
Yeah.
Okay,
I don't want to spend it, thank you. Not
all
yet.
right, then I guess I shouldn't read what I read.
No, you're okay, just read from to be expense from,
To be expensed from the account,
from
okay.
account 272.
272602.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
All in favor? If I can create a reserve in that account, I will prefer it. Thank you. Because it's a struggle. All right. By the way, the power is tomorrow, and if you have a chance to come at 1 o'clock or 6 or 7 o'clock, whenever, come have a look at what's happening there. A lot of work has been involved, and thank you, Councillor Creed, for all your support. Much
1 and 7 p.m.
appreciated.
Those are the grand entries.
Yeah. The grant entry might be the second one. It appears that they want to push it to 7 o'clock and have the princess pageant at 5, break between 6 and 7, and 7, start, 6:45 start again. Okay? 7D, Cardston County Water Agreement. Jeff, maybe you want to speak to that.
Yeah, I'm going to put a bit of stuff in front of you here, but I'll make a point of explaining it. This is one of those items that I wanted on the agenda, but didn't have the stuff in front of me from vacation, and the county's looking for a response. I received a letter from the county requesting that under our current water agreement, they must provide us with some information for new subdivisions, and then we give them approval to extend infrastructure to that subdivision and then we will convey water under our current agreement. And so they are now looking at extending a water infrastructure line to Etna. So it will go out through the south and into the hamlet of Etna, and they are requesting that we approve that subdivision as per our current water agreement. But it's not that cut and dry. It's sort of that cut and dry. So under the current agreement, I have no reason to not approve the subdivision. Okay, it's probably a relatively low impact subdivision. I appreciate the county is only installing drip systems, so the homes only receive a half a gallon per minute, and it fills a cistern. And so it keeps the pressure completely regulated on our end. So it doesn't put huge impact on our lift stations. So for example, that water all has to go up the East Hill through that lift station, but if everyone's only getting a half a gallon per minute all day long, it doesn't spike the pumps, which is great. Bart feels that our current infrastructure can handle that system. It can handle that load. Now, at full build out, it is a significant distribution line, requiring 290,000 cubic meters annually at full build out. Now, my guess is we are 50 years away from full build-out. It's anticipated that the initial few years of this is a half a dozen homes, a dozen homes. It's really, really minor because there's a significant connection cost for the end user. So here's the only, in my opinion, administratively, the only wrinkle in just saying, yes, go ahead. And I hope I got my numbers in front of me here.
104,000, 113,000.
So the current water agreement with the county has a maximum annual treatment volume that we will treat for them annually. And that amount is 113,000 cubic meters. That is the annual treatment under the current agreement. The county is requesting in this agreement alone 290,000 cubic meters. So it's 2.5 times our current annual agreement. But again, that's at full build out. That is a long way down the road, and we are not even pushing up against this 113,000 now. I don't have the exact number. I'm going to get that from the county because they log it, but we're well below the 113,000. But the other issue I have is that I asked Murray for his water license number with the province. The county only has 104,000 cubic meters allocated to them from license, and they're requesting a build out of 290,000. But they don't even have half the license to cover it. So down the road, this is going to be an issue. We're kicking the can down the road a little bit. I'm very comfortable we could probably accommodate the next 10 years of that extension under the current agreement. That doesn't really bother me. I'm pretty sure we're okay. But I almost want to agree to the subdivision with the condition that we're not going to treat above the average or the annual maximum as per the agreement. And that the county is going to have to acquire way more licenses by the time this needs to ramp up, because they simply don't hold sufficient license even to execute the current agreement. They hold 104,000, we've agreed to 113. Now the 9,000, for what it's worth, were transferred to the town after this was written to supply the Ellison subdivision. It's a bit of a roundabout horse trading story, but at the end of the day, Ellison had some license on the Belly River, which was transferred to the St. Mary's because they were doing a development in the town. And so that's fine, I can account for the 9,000, that's okay. But we do not have an agreement that can satisfy their request totally. However, we're years away from getting to that request. So I see a bit of a conditional yes, we're going to monitor consumption closely annually, and we'll still only go up to the annual maximum until that's amended, and they can show license to support an amendment.
Okay, Councillor Bound, Councillor Barfuss.
So I guess that's the question I had are they in the works of getting that amended so that they can increase their water license?
So I
have two questions.
Yeah, so for that one, my understanding is they have access to it, to more licensing to purchase when required. That's my understanding.
Okay, and the other question is that they're building the infrastructure from
Yes.
the edge of town to Etna?
Correct.
That's not our
No.
expense?
No, it's not. Now, we've been given blueprints. Bart has been talking with their operations. We had Albert Tago look at it quickly. My biggest concern was impact of fire flows on the East Hill if it burdened that pump station. That was my concern. Did we need an upgrade on the pump station so that we could supply that development but still maintain fire flows? The town did a significant upgrade on that lift station 5-6 years ago in order to get our fire flows where we wanted them on the East Hill. And I didn't want to compromise that already. But with a drip system at a half a gallon per minute, and even if you have 30-40 people on it, you're not putting a lot of volume through that system. It fills up all night long, it fills up all day when people are at work, and then they deplete it in the peak hours. And it simply drips in all day. That's what the Vadney development is out this side of town. That's a cistern drip system as well. So pressures are pretty minor. So I think that we don't have a reason to decline the request except with some conditions saying this is asking for a greater amount than the agreement allows us to treat for you. So we agree to it up to the amount the agreement allows.
until such time as you get
So
your.
Yeah.
are we
Councillor
looking,
Barfuss?
are we looking for a motion to approve this?
I would like a motion to approve and to approve the application of the county under the water agreement, yes.
So I'm prepared to make that motion to approve the application for from the county on the water agreement with the caveats as we've discussed.
Questions?
Yeah, first question for me, what are the whisperings of potential water needs going west?
Yeah, so no whisperings, it's being discussed openly.
Okay.
So we have met, Bart and I have met with the county on their plans to design a system that will go to, all the way to Mountain View. And actually, which is kind of a good thing for us, Albert Tago from Talbera got the bid to design that. So Albert is intimately aware of our system. He's done design and he did our infrastructure master plan, he gets our system, and he won the bid to design that system for the county. So the discussion we had preliminary with the county is that is going to require upgrades to the plant.
Mm.
And the costs for that need to be included in costing the distribution line. That it's probably considerable upgrades to our plant. What that means, and again, this is all very preliminary, so it's not designed yet. But what Bart and Albert seem to feel we're going to need is, while they're low volume, not low volume, that's low, the speed of consumption in drip systems is low. At the end of the day, if we have another 500 people on it, we can't treat at the proper speed to satisfy that. So in these hot days, the last couple of weeks, we are barely keeping up with our stored treated water
Daily.
daily.
Yeah.
So we have, volume-wise, we can treat lots of volume, but when it's high demand, we get behind. So thankfully, we have good treated storage, but we get behind on that, especially in these hot days. And then over the night, it catches up, just like we talked about with the cistern system. Overnight, our treatment catches up, and it catches up and refills. But we have high demand at certain times of day in the summer. Those dinner times and afternoons are heavy, and our plant can't treat at the same pace it's putting out.
Okay.
So what Bart's suggesting in Albert is we need a pre-filtration center. So it takes the water in from the reservoirs, and it does a coarse filtration, and then it goes to the plant. Because what happens is, we have to backwash the plant so often, and that shuts everything down from producing
Right.
to backwash, and we get behind. And so this would be a key piece of infrastructure, and again, I'm just saying it may be needed, because they haven't done the design yet, but we had discussions with the county that part of their capital cost may be upgrades to the plant.
Okay. Councillor Barnes?
Just musing a question, like McGrath and Glenwood and Raymond, they all have an irrigation system on top of their system. It's unfiltered raw water that comes out of the canal.
Yep.
Do we have that? Never?
No.
That's never going to be a possibility for our
Well, I wouldn't
county?
suggest it would never be a possibility. We have the community irrigation line now that goes down to Rotary Park.
Yeah.
And we've moved the campground, the reunion center, the Remington Museum, Dallin Levitt residence we moved. So those adjacent to that over the last 2 years, we've moved. Remington made a significant investment in raw water irrigation to transfer over their whole system. There's been some discussion about pushing that up to the temple to get them off of potable water for irrigation. And so yes, it's a possibility, just the infrastructure isn't under the pavement.
Right.
That's the kicker,
Yeah,
and that's the expense.
okay.
But yeah, it'd be fantastic
Yeah, it would
to
be.
have that, yeah.
Jeff, just wondering, a time frame. We are within the next 15 years due for an upgrade, no matter what, of our water treatment center. So is that something that the engineering firm is going to kind of look to put into that whole new plan?
I haven't talked to Albert about that specifically.
Because it needs to
Yeah.
be thought of.
Yeah,
Because we are coming closer and closer
Yeah.
to the age of that
Mm-hmm.
treatment centers that need to be replaced.
yeah,
And I think if we have another 15 years, we're doing well.
yeah. You know, as we start to extend out under this water agreement, and if the county starts putting some infrastructure in it, it makes sense at that time we start talking commission, regional water.
Well,
treatment, right?
that's what I'm
Makes good
wondering.
sense.
I'm wondering if we shouldn't start to look at plans, including that notion of the commission of
Spread
refurbishing
the
that
costs
whole
around.
treatment.
Mhm.
And then at that time, we need to try to see with the blood tribe what can happen, because originally they put a chunk of money up front towards that
Yeah.
infrastructure, and we still will provide water.
Their agreement
To the
actually
reserve.
specifically talks about at the time for capital reinvestment that they would proportionally be involved. Their
So
agreement speaks to that already.
it seems to me that we need to start to get those wheels moving sooner than later.
Yeah.
Anyway, just a thought. We have a motion on the table, so all in favor?
Sorry, just
Oh, sorry.
regarding that motion, I wanted to clarify that there's one of the caveats in there, it talks about if the pressure if the pressure needs increase, that becomes their problem, not ours,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And so if they need an extra pump or whatever,
Right.
that's on them.
Yeah,
you
okay,
know.
all right.
So, because, yeah, this trickle
Yeah.
plan sounds great, but the minute they need more,
But if there's 200 of them on it.
yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
okay. So that is a wise
Okay.
caveat, sure.
Okay.
All in favor? Thank you very much, and thank you for your input. 7E, Code of Conduct Regulation, we need to approve the quarterly Code of Conduct Compliance Report.
You probably don't need this, but you'll remember under the Code of Conduct quarterly, you need to approve my report. My report is that there has been nothing to report,
Yeah.
and
but I
which
still
makes
need a
me
motion
happy. All
to,
right.
This is the same as we used to get it.
The
yeah, you used to
market-
back in the day, the market surveillance
Market
report.
surveillance.
That's right,
Yeah.
I was thinking of the name, yeah.
Same
Yeah.
story.
Yep.
Surveillance
Okay.
report.
So
Correct.
who will put that motion
I will
forward?
move to, are we approving
Yeah, approve it,
the resolution or the Code of
approve
Conduct
the
Regulation
Code of
quarterly
Conduct report
Close the report.
dated June 30th, 2017.
Dated June 30th, 2017?
All in favor? Thank you very much. 7F is an interesting little working group that Glenn Motz is trying to put together between the Cardston County Road Tribe, the town of Cardston, and other affiliated organizations and agencies to try to discuss common issues that we have in town. Jeff, do you want to address us regarding
I
this
had
issue?
sent you an email about dates that were go and no-go for this meeting, and so I sent in, I talked to Mr. Motz today. This is just the email calendar invite they sent me. They would like to have that meeting here on the 15th of August at 1 PM here in the council chambers. They feel they have agreement from enough delegates. I'm not convinced, Mr. Motz didn't sound convinced he had all the people he wanted in the room, but he had enough of the people that this was a place to start.
That's
Okay,
next Tuesday.
yeah. It's really a lot of work on his part in his office, so kudos to him for having done that for us.
Yeah, just keep your
So how many of you will be able to be here by show of hand? All of us, perfect, thank you.
That's from 1 to 4:30, right? Yeah.
One till it ends.
Till it
It's
Yeah,
open-ended.
Whatever. Okay, thank you very much.
I'm sure
Go
this is
ahead.
the case, but do we have a list of our talking points, or do we need to maybe have a subcommittee sit down and?
When I talked to Mr. Motz today, he said that he is going to put a bit of a brief agenda together and facilitate the meeting. I should have that shortly. He's gonna have that sent out. I haven't seen it yet. If you want, he's gonna be at the powwow tomorrow, and then again on the weekend for the parade.
And
So-
it's going to be at a pancake at 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So we got a chance to visit with him a bit about what that agenda could look like.
Right. I was just gonna add, if there's any influence that we can put into there, something about the waste situation, their position on joining the commission, et cetera. I don't know, I mean, that's kind
Oh, I
of
see
biggie
what
for
you're trying
right
to
now.
talk about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's
told him I would
interesting.
find him at the powwow tomorrow,
Right.
so we could have a little chat about this.
Even if it's just like preliminary.
Sure.
You know, here's another of our concerns that sooner rather than later we need to address. I mean, we're talking 2 months, we need answers.
So this is kind of like a quasi-council meeting then?
No,
No, very, I think it'd be quite informal.
it's a group, working group.
Yeah,
It's
and I
not
think
an official much on
My guess is Mr. Moss just wants to introduce this notion of how this can look long-term. The county and the town both have elections around the corner. It's a different slate of people around the table. I think he has a chance to get it rolling, and he's gonna take that opportunity.
And I really appreciate that very, very much. It's a long time coming. All right, under 8, financial report, if you have any question regarding that report, let me know.
Motion to accept that.
Sure,
Move to accept the financial reports.
thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Let's go under 9, committee and other reports, CEO report. Questions regarding that report? Jeff, thank you for taking the time. The picture was really speaking highly of what you saw.
Nice report. All reports need pictures from now on.
Yeah, also this be my desk with the whiteboard.
Where is that?
That's at Lake McDonald down by West Glacier.
Nice.
Yeah. It was
Yeah, and I was thinking it had me drooling.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so thank you very much, Jeff, for taking the time to do that. 9B, peace officer report. There is something interesting there.
Yeah, and I'm appreciating these reports. One suggestion, one request maybe, that I'm seeing, when we get our monthly reports, he talks about the fines that he issued that month. And then right at the very bottom, on the last page, there's a little tiny phrase at the very bottom that says how much of those fees we've collected.
Yeah.
It's always 0 because they're not due yet. What I'm curious about is
It's how
maybe
much we have collected.
how much, 3 months ago has come in versus how much has not. I'm just curious if that could be added to these reports so we can kind of see, are we losing money, are we getting some
Yeah, I don't know
resistance?
that-
Well,
He
you're
would
not
know
losing
that.
money. The
So-
question is, are we making it?
Here's the trick with it. Most everything that Brad writes goes to the provincial system. Not all, not exclusively, but anything traffic related, anything under those acts. We've always got a check every month from the province because anything the sheriffs write or the RCs write, we get a portion of. And I have no way to break that out. All we get is provincial fines revenue portion. And it could be made up of all manner of things. So we actually don't know who pays them and who doesn't. We don't know how they settle with the Crown prosecutor. We don't know. The only thing we do know, and it's not appropriate to bring to council, is who didn't show and had a warrant put out for them. We get that. And that's it. I don't know
Okay.
how that works.
thing.
It's tricky.
In other words, the only thing that we can determine is at the end of the year, when the total fines and
Yeah, we can look at
Is
it.
it higher or lower?
come,
Yeah.
if it's higher than the year before,
Yeah.
that's about the only way we can tell.
So what kind of a check do we get usually from? them?
Well, it's changing because we have a level
Fines.
1 now,
Fines.
right? For
Yes.
2 months, but prior, $700 a month, $1,100 a month, stuff like, it was in that
Fines
range.
and
Not a
No,
lot.
it's a share, it's not the whole thing.
Yeah, it's not the whole thing. And-
But with Brad,
Well, no, even tickets that Brad issues, I think the province keeps 30%.
okay.
Because again, they're running through the court system.
Yes.
They're running through the
Pay
Crown
that.
prosecutor, they do all that stuff.
Yeah,
So, but I know if the sheriffs come in and blitz the town for a couple of days, that number goes up for us, because we get our percentage of their tickets.
Yeah.
Within our municipality.
yeah.
The only thing that we can tell Councillor Peavoy is that there's definitely more tickets being written because we have a level 1 peace officer.
Well, one thing I could look at, Councillor, is I could have Hawking give me year-to-date on that GL
Yes,
versus last year.
maybe month by month. we
Because
might-
that would be attributed to the level 1, right? So not sheriffs.
This year is the only time that will work.
Yeah, this year it would work. But I could get a bit of a feel for year-to-date on
Yeah.
that GL. It's not perfect, but it'd give us some
That'll give us
indication.
an idea.
Yeah, okay, I'll look
Okay.
at that.
Thank you. 9C, development report for the second quarter. As you can see, there is a few new developments and housing starts. That's good. There is a little bit more of assessment value, which means that we will have a little bit more tax revenues. So it's always interesting to see development happening in our town. Grateful for that too. 9D, major projects report. There is something there regarding Second Avenue, and it's moving along quite well. No glitches, Jeff? As far
Sorry,
as
I
we
don't
know?
have the report.
Yeah, I don't have it either.
Okay. So, what I'll do, I met with Brandon this morning, I'll give you a quick update. On Second Avenue, Brandon said last week was pretty slow, because they were going through the intersections, and what they've been doing is stubbing out new lines off the new manholes whenever they're in intersections. So he said last week was slow, but then this week they're on that little half block, and they should have most things tidied up really close by the end of the week as far as water and sewer, and then they'll get that road back, at least
Paved at the end of the
yeah,
summer,
it'll get
right?
paved at the end of the summer,
Yeah.
so that's going fairly well. The 7th Avenue loop that we did through the Ellison property and back to the lift station, they've got to install one more valve, and then they're gonna energize that line, which should increase water pressures in that whole neck of the woods. They're relatively low over there. I don't want to say they're really low, but they're relatively low. He said, so that's coming along, and they've had a few other small things they've had to run out to here and there, so they haven't been able to focus on 2nd Avenue solely, but it's getting close.
All right. When you have a meeting with the engineering firm, Stantec,
Oh, Stantec, yeah.
regarding that St. Mary's River
Yeah.
outflow, would you please keep us
Of
posted?
course, yeah. Yeah.
We'd like to know
Yeah.
if they intend to compensate us
Yeah.
for the multiple repair costs.
Well, and my concern is, like 3 weeks ago, right before I left on vacation, we had a small leak again on this transportation road. It wasn't that big. And so when they unearthed it, they found that there was stress on the pipe, there was some cracks in it causing it to leak. And Bart says, you know, that probably happened prior to the reprogramming of the pumps, but how far does that go?
And
I
that's
mean, we have
a-
60 sections of pipe with that same problem. We fixed 5 so far. Are we just gonna do this every year before, you know, forever and ever, because that'll be an absolute wreck.
And so they need to come up
So we
with
need
a
to assess it.
solution and with a proper assessment.
Yeah.
Are they able to push camera to it?
They can, and one thing Bart said that he threw out to them is, and you guys might remember the line that went under Zenith's store and then over to
Yes.
Holland's?
So I
And
had
we put that
a
liner in the
kind of
whole thing, they
liner,
pushed
yeah.
that epoxy liner. Although that's brand new pipe technically,
They
one of the
could
things
do
Bart
that.
threw out there is maybe we have to epoxy line that whole thing.
Yeah, well,
And
if that's a way to keep it safe,
instead
then,
of digging it all up again.
yeah,
I
stop
think they can
leaking.
go a few hundred meters at a time with the epoxy liner, and there's no connections on it, so it'd be pretty slick.
Right,
Like with the other ones, you had to measure the exact location of every connection and drill them out. There's 0 connections on this thing all the way out.
right,
So those are some discussions we're gonna have.
Good.
My concern is we're fixing these forever, and as much as it doesn't sound like much, it probably costs us 10 grand a time.
yeah, and we're not, on a project that is less than, well, I remember being there when they cut the ribbon.
Yeah,
So we're talking about
6 years
5
ago?
years ago,
Yeah.
5, 6 years ago?
yeah,
And I still have a picture.
on
And
40-year pipe,
I'm thinking 6 years ago, it's really,
yeah,
The
Not very
liability,
good.
I figure, who's liable?
yeah.
I haven't
Well-
heard that yet.
The biggest cost we're having is Alberta Environment is requiring us to pump all of the treated effluent
Truck.
and truck it to St. Mary's.
yes, it's crazy.
So we have to rent enough trucks to keep up with the effluent, and they pump it, and they truck it to St. Mary's, dump it, come back, fill up again. We are not allowed to discharge into the Lee Creek anymore.
Which Creek just runs into St. Mary's.
It's only a few hundred yards from St. Mary's.
But that's the way it
But
goes.
because of the low flow in the Lee right now, we would probably
Yeah.
double the volume of Lee with effluent.
Yeah.
And we
which
can
is not
understand as
good.
much as it hurts, I can understand why they're not okay with that. I get it. I get it, but
Although it's treated.
it hurts to rent that many trucks to keep them running for the whole time we're repairing them.
Anyway, I hope they have a good sense of how much it's costing us.
I have an exact sense.
I don't like the figure. Thank you very
Can
much.
I back up and ask a question of
sure.
Councillor Creed on the committees and Bloom meeting, or were you gonna bring that up?
Not unless you have
have a question?
Well, I do have a question.
I'll try and answer it. I
Yeah.
actually had to miss it.
Under your new business there, the E.J. Wood Memorial Park,
Yeah, what's this?
This was suggested by one of the committee members, and I suppose it'll have to be discussed.
yeah.
And where that park would be is anybody's guess right now too, so it was
Yeah,
a
I just
suggestion.
wondered how that would affect the development that we've already,
Well, I don't think it's going to necessarily be on the E.J. Wood school lot necessarily.
It's just
E.J.
a
Wood-
park that would be called.
E.J. Wood was a leader in the community. I mean, one time somebody offered us to buy his house, where he lives. We turned that down, but anyway, I thought it's fine to make suggestions, and
yeah,
it'll have to be discussed, and
I think it's a great idea.
well, it is. It's good to recognize founders and leaders. If we do a Charles or a Card Park, or we have the Card Home now.
Yeah.
But E.J. Wood was a significant
Well, more so
founder
than
in the
any.
community, and if we was to find a spot or even a part in an existing park, and
Have even a
memorialize
structure or
E.J.
something.
Wood, might be a nice touch.
Okay,
So we'll see.
thank you.
And just while we're on that, did we get our booms back? Do we know how we
No,
did?
we
We won't know
Yeah.
till for a while on
Yeah.
that. There-
Probably
there-
not
yeah,
before
There is
September.
the awards thing in September,
Yeah.
and
September.
I don't know what the discussions were about, if we're going to try and send some representatives to that, or if the Communities in Bloom has the budget, so I won't, like I say, I
Where's
missed that
the-
meeting, so.
Also have it in Leduc this year.
It's in Leduc, yeah,
Yeah.
so it's a little ways to go.
Yeah. All right, we'll talk about it later.
We'll see.
Okay, thank you. Maybe at the first meeting, CCW will talk about that.
Sure.
Try to see what we decide at that point. By then, we should know where we stand. Okay? So, under 11, correspondence. Community Foundation, Lethbridge and Southwestern Alberta, if you remember, we do have a lot of funding that comes from that organization every couple of years. We can only apply every couple of years, and we apply normally through one of our groups in town, the Lions or the Rotary. So what we would like to see if the council would do the same as that did last year. I feel it's important for us to be present at that thing. Last year, a motion was given to send Jeff and I to that meeting, and I think possibly it would be the right thing to do that again. So,
I agree, and I'm prepared to make that motion, please.
Go ahead.
Approve funding for you and Jeff to attend the Community Foundation, was it banquet, gala?
Yeah,
Function?
it's function,
Friends of the foundation.
yeah.
There you go.
Okay, on September 28th.
Yes.
Okay. All in favor? Thank you very much. Jeff, you have one more duty. Okay, let's go. The rest is really correspondence, okay? Under B, Alberta Coordinated Action for Recycling Enterprises, CARE, it's called in short. And last year, Councillor Peavoy went to that. Councillor Peavoy, your impression regarding that, should we have somebody go there, or should we
I appreciate the question.
bypass that?
I found great value in attending. However, having gone to attend again would probably be, and especially all the way up to Leduc, because last time it was close in Lethbridge, so it made sense. I didn't have it overnight or anything.
Right.
I don't even think I claimed mileage, but that's neither here nor there. So yeah, I don't, having read this, I don't think there'd be a huge benefit to me going again. That being said, I was surprised how much I gained from the last one.
So is that something that people from the
Yeah, actually, I was going to say, my guess
Mountain.
is we'll probably have a couple of representatives from the authority attending.
okay, that's what I was
And so
wondering.
we'll get whatever.
Okay, all right. Okay, sounds good. All right, so if I understand, we will wait for their feedback.
Yeah, the representative from McGrath
Okay,
is very on
that's
top
good.
of
Thank you.
it. See,
All right, so under 11C, Alberta Development Officers Association, that's to declare another day of something, and honestly, if we don't intend to do anything with that, it's not worth doing.
I'll take Nolan out. We'll
Good.
do something internally. We didn't declare Public Works Week, we just had our Public Works.
Good,
So
sounds
we'll do
like
the
more
same thing.
fun.
get them here to the cave.
Yeah,
All right.
do something.
Alberta Municipal Affairs, as you could see, one of those letters is to tell us that we got the funding to do Second Avenue.
That just helps, or does it cover the?
Well, that's just a portion.
Yeah.
$135,000.
All
That's
right.
great.
Well, we take whatever they've given us, and we say thank you. Under AUMA, there is an interesting motion that we may want to discuss a little bit. They are intending to present a motion at the conference to try to join AUMA, AMDNC. And the reason being that very often we are both working in a vacuum, which is not helpful, and yet there are similar questions that we may have. My point of view is possibly an interesting idea to allow both groups to understand what the other is happening. And in a year where we have to work with each other, it's maybe even more important. But it is also true that each of those bodies have specific questions that they may want to discuss and vote on without the other meddling in a vote. Whatever. Not so
Right.
Barfuss.
Part of my thoughts on this was that it seems to me that in the past, the province has used that
Divide and conquer.
divide and conquer approach, and this may help to overcome some of that.
I agree, somewhat.
We have more delegates though, right? AUMA, it seems to me,
I don't know.
7 from each town beats 7 from each county in this province, right?
There's 360 urbans or
So
something.
my only
Maybe
fear when I was reading
30
this,
counties.
my concern was, does this mean that the urbans are going to overpower the rurals when it comes time for votes?
No, that,
Because that's been a problem in this province, in my opinion. Being a small town, I hate it when big towns outvote small towns, right? And so, just to defend the county a little,
Okay.
their autonomy, if it's threatened by this, it's a little worrisome.
well, this is what I was trying to say by saying some of the problem or question or issues
Maybe so.
are very separate, and they should be able to vote on that themselves, but the town knowing what's happening, and vice versa. I think there are some issues, even with big towns, that are not
We
small
do that now
town
with
things.
inside of AUMA. There
Right.
are folks that are taking
And
it
so,
just for.
it
cities
seems
or
to
just
me
small
Yeah,
that-
exactly, it's a
that's
6-1.
That is where the autonomy is necessary,
Yeah.
it's in the voting.
Sure.
Yeah, anyway, I'll just respond to that too. It would actually increase the rural delegates at AUMA. Because,
Showing up.
well, we have small town, like we just mentioned, the small towns versus the large cities. And if we all of a sudden brought in the counties, we would have that many more,
Have that
Small
many
influence.
that many more delegates, for the rural area. And like they said, we already have a section for, small towns, west, small towns, south, whatever. And so I'm sure that if they would work out the logistics, I think it would be a step in the right direction.
You really have to book the motels early.
Well, that was my only concern, would it be
And when do you find a place?
That's right.
And do we go twice a year?
a flood of that many
You'd
days?
have to move it to Vegas every time.
And
Yeah, they go twice a year.
Anyways, there would be, the logistic will be left with AUMA, thank you. So, do we
interesting.
want to keep this as a position of our council to support that motion? And at AUMA, you will vote according to your clicker.
Well, our new council.
Yes, yeah, you're right, exactly. Okay, confident, Statistics Canada, you have the
Oh, sorry.
reference? Go ahead.
On 11EI,
Okay.
sorry, no, E2I, anyway, whatever,
Okay.
however to say that. In the newsletter, there's some news I saw regarding here on page 1, a grant that's available for helping to promote women running for office. And I was
Right.
wondering if maybe we shouldn't put together an initiative to apply for and get that grant and have one of these, as they're recommending here, what are they're calling them, just information sessions for women
Right,
interested in
yeah.
municipal
Mhm.
office.
The deadline to apply was July 19th.
Well, and so that's what I'm
Already
wondering
passed.
And
is that gone, is there still money
this
there?
is why I'm not talking about it, because
Sure.
it's passé.
Well, but I'm wondering if maybe a phone call, I'm sure, because it's still their priority, right? So we didn't
It
get
is.
this news until just now.
I mean, to tell you the truth, there is value in having more equal representation at the table of any council. So,
If we could make that side of the table better looking.
I don't know how
No,
that's
I'm
possible.
Councillor Peavoy, I wouldn't want you to be distracted from your duties.
No, not at all.
Jeff, if you want to make a phone call and find out, yeah, thanks.
And even if we don't get any financial support, it might be worth stewing. And last time we kind of spoke about the upcoming election. We talked about how we need to start taking steps soon.
Do you know what we could do? We could post that reference on our site. Yes.
If I might, Shem, did you put up that brochure from the province on our election page about women getting involved in municipal council? Wasn't there something,
There was something.
we got a
while
brochure or
back.
something the province
Yeah.
put out? I can't remember that went up there potentially.
While he's looking that up, I know we're planning one, maybe 2 information sessions.
I wanted to bring that up before you adjourned.
Before we adjourn,
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe, would be appropriate since it fits in this item.
Go ahead.
What month are we looking at doing that?
So what we had talked about, I think it was a couple meetings ago, was right after CCW in September.
September.
So the first
Oh, before or after?
We were gonna start, I just had it after at 6 o'clock, I think people are off work, they can get here. And I put up an agenda, how I thought we might work it is there's some information that is just good for everybody, and I would try and keep that to a few minutes, and then it would be kind of informal discussion with you as the current councillors. But I probably had 10 minutes of, here's some things everyone needs to know, here's how you get nominated, here's what you gotta have, here's when everything's due. Here's some mandatory dates of, well, not mandatory, but dates like AUMA and different things you need to potentially have open. Here's when council meetings have been, but they can change by motion of council. So I had a bit of an agenda put together that I could, or somebody could go over everything, but we had it planned for the CCW in September.
Which is like 3 weeks.
Yeah,
So
yeah, we're gonna
citizens in
advertise
this
next week.
town, yeah, need to know.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, are we planning a second one, or was that the old one?
That was the only one we
Yeah,
had
that's
talked
what
about
I
so
said.
far.
One 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
Just did the
Was
one.
it just the one? I thought?
Yeah, it was just one.
When is nomination day?
It's the
September
18th.
18th?
Yes. What we need to find out is if the Chamber of Commerce is going to put,
Yeah,
A
they
little
won't do that
bit
till
of,
after candidate, till after nomination day.
yeah, we need to know if they are kind of
Candidates
planning.
forum.
Right, they need to have
Yeah.
a regular.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we need to also know.
When are the packages available for people to consider?
You can download now
It's
on the town
online
site.
right
It's
now.
online.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you put that on, Tricia?
The candidates got it.
Okay, I remember there's something specific for
Women,
women
yeah.
considering running for council. We can look at that on the page too. I thought it might have been there.
Well, it might be worthwhile having a separate one just to invite women who might feel less comfortable coming to the general one, but more comfortable coming to a very specific one.
The mayor can speak.
The mayor, yeah. I think that would be worth looking into. I'll just throw that out.
Thank you.
If you collectively want us to host another one of those, have a motion for it and we'll get to work on it if you collectively agree with that.
Well, I will make that motion and we'll see how it goes. I mean, I don't know what the actual cost of such an event would be. Probably minimal if we're not feeding them, so
Yeah, that's fair.
if we gave them all sandwiches, a grant like this might help,
We could do a lunch and
like a lunch
kind
for
of
women.
something like that. we're good.
Given the historically low turnout that we have for the main one, I'm not opposed to it, but I just don't know that there's any
Yeah,
value. Somebody who's interested in running for council
would come,
Would come to the other
either.
is
Yeah,
not
I
gonna
think so
be
too.
hesitant about sitting down in a room with 4 or 5 other guys to get some information.
I don't
But-
think it's so much about that they don't want to run, as it's much that they've got so many responsibilities already, that some of them just don't feel that they have the time.
Well, it's the same,
And same with
that's the
guys.
same, that's the same discussion that every single
Yeah.
person that's considered
Exactly,
running for council.
so I think it would be
Okay.
sufficient to
If
tell.
I try to play the devil's advocate, the province is doing
Big initiative.
promoting,
Yeah.
AUMA is doing that promotion. Therefore, what I'm trying to
Like I said,
say
I'm
is
not opposed to this.
is that there seems to be a push toward getting women involved in municipal affairs. Yeah, culturally, it's a little bit more different up here.
You know, there's a lot of women mayors at the AUMA, and they're doing a great job. I don't know, no, I don't have a problem with it
Okay,
either.
Let me explain to you what
There's already
the
lots of
objective
that.
is. AUMA is trying to do the same as a federal in government, try to get about 50%
Mhm.
of councillors or mayor of council being represented by a female element. That's what I'm aiming for.
Yeah.
Right now, we are about 33% or something like that. So they're trying to do that push this year, trying to create a more balanced representation across Canada, really, and the province in particular.
This is just my guess, I haven't run the numbers, but my guess is that our town probably historically has been a little behind that average.
Yes,
So,
I would
so
agree
we
with
would be one of the towns that would need to step up maybe our push in that direction.
I think I can name the amount of
Sure.
women that have been on council, so.
And I really think,
Yeah. Really,
yeah.
you know, if you-
So I appreciate your interest in
I wrote a
getting,
paper on it for my master's, so.
in getting women involved. So, I mean, if there is a desire, I have no problem hosting a luncheon and speaking to it. I have no problem with that. So,
One thing we could do is, we need to do it probably at the end of this week, first of the week, because we could put it out as an RSVP and see if we have any bites.
why don't
You know,
we
we
do
put it out, say
something?
RSVP by this date, and if we only have one person RSVP, we,
Take
Maybe
it
Why don't we just
Yeah.
check right in then?
Okay,
yeah, we take her
all
lunch
right.
and that's it. But-
Thank you, Jeff. You
So we
solved.
could certainly do that, but, did you make a motion?
I did make a
Yes.
motion.
So-
Do we need to up to a couple of bucks? Do you need, or it'll probably be under your discretionary amount anyway?
Okay, why don't you put the motion to,
Post a luncheon for,
upon response to our RSVP or to our,
right. So, yeah, I'll move to host a campaign promotion for women, a luncheon, with an RSVP, awaiting RSVP response.
yeah, makes sense. All in favor? Thank you.
Before
Yes,
you adjourn, I need some help. The parade in Lethbridge, I have a little package for you on the 22nd. I have never been to it, and you guys want to do a luncheon after, I want to make sure I got my times right. Any idea when it's all said and done, when you're all said and done? So it talks about from the Adams Ice Arena, they have shuttles that'll take you back to the start, but they leave at 11:30, 12:15, and 1 o'clock. And I'm guessing, when the heck do I book lunch?
1 o'clock.
That really depends upon whether your council dumps you off on the side of the road.
Right.
You jumped off.
Put out an axe to grind to help me out there. I really appreciate it.
The carriage has to return back to, you know, pick
Yeah.
up their horses, and we just ride back with the carriage.
Oh,
That's what we did.
Yeah, that's what
I really think the latter time would be a better
You
time.
start at 10, I believe.
Yeah. Because
That would be pretty rushed to have it for noon.
No, I
Yeah,
think if you
one
do
would
it
be
1
better.
o'clock.
Okay, I just wasn't sure on that one,
No, it seems to me when we used to do it with Mayor's Cow, it used to be 1 o'clock.
okay,
Yeah.
I'll put it for 1 right now and we'll.
Do you know where we're going?
No, I haven't booked it yet.
What's the date of
The 22nd.
That's a Tuesday, right?
Yeah, Tuesday, August 22nd.
Okay, so
Yeah, we're
please
doing spouses.
reply to Jeff if you're going to.
Well, I have
your
RSVPs
spouse.
from, I think, all of you on there
Everybody
already.
okay, all right, so
This
that's
is
fine.
just the information on where to be and when to be, and don't throw candy or they're gonna kick you out and all that stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
That's all we gotta
And-
do, get kicked out?
And honestly, if we're able to carpool that day, please do so, because honestly, trying to find a parking spot is very difficult.
Well, I can take the town car in too if we need.
Fine, you can have me and my husband. So there'll be already one car,
And I can just
one
pick you
less,
up and drop you off.
thank you. One less car. Okay, adjournment. Thank you. All right, Councillor Creed,
All right.
thank you. Thank you very much to all of you.
When do we
Come
meet?
tomorrow and,
We'll meet at Remington for the parade this week?
yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
come tomorrow. Remember, Remington is about 9 o'clock when you have to be